The breaking news that came out just before we went to air here was this new Supreme Court ruling striking down the plan to defund USAID, specifically the DOGE plan, by stopping payments. Now, I've looked into some of the details of the case, and I want people to understand that there's still going to be other bites at the apple with USAID. First of all, the ruling was only on the emergency injunction. The underlying case is still working its way through the appeals process. It's then going to go to the from the local court, from the district court, the circuit court. It's then going to go up to the Supreme Court when that happens. So we know all of that's going to take place. This was the emergency appeal. There's also an underlying contract issue. So it's more than just the funding of USAID. And there's other ways that we'll get bites at this apple too, one of which, of course, is going to be in the budgetary process. But there's something that I wanted to get into, and I wanted to discuss. This is big. This is really big. Amy Coney Barrett. The role of Amy Coney Barrett, someone who voted against this, against the conservatives, against the conservative majority on this, something where Alito and so many others are coming out saying, what are you doing? How can you allow for one local federal judge to enact an emergency injunction that binds the entire nation? Clearly, the founders did not intend for that framework to make any sense whatsoever. But then you also have this case of Amy Coney Barrett, and she is someone who, by the way, humanevents.com actually ran a story saying that we were a little bit concerned about Amy Coney Barrett all the way back in 2019, asking if she was really the best choice, for Supreme Court. Well, came out and said that she was not. That was from John Zmirak, and we took a lot of guff for publishing that all the way back in 2019. And now we see her rule on case after case after case, siding with the liberals. Although, of course, she also did take out Roe v. Wade. I want to bring on Evita Duffy here because I want to go through some of this. You know, Evita, I don't know if you've looked at X. I know you said you were at Mass. People are outraged. People are outraged against Amy Coney Barrett. It's something that's going completely viral right now. And they say, what is wrong? How is this someone who, look, is she more conservative than the person that she replaced? Sure. Okay, fine. Yet it seems like she falls in with the liberals on every single issue outside of pro-life. So was this the cost of overturning Roe v. Wade? Or is this just someone who is completely sort of in line with this kind of like Pope Francis version of Catholicism? And here we are discussing the Catholics on the court on Ash Wednesday, which is kind of different from the more conservative, shall we say, Benedictine version of Catholicism that, by the way, Alito and Gorsuch, I believe, and of course Clarence Thomas, are also all Catholic, yet they don't exactly agree with Amy Coney Barrett. Wanted to get into that with you, Evita. What's your take?
Well, she probably is a Vatican II Catholic, Jack. She probably loves to shake hands in
Precisely.
Mass. She likes it when the minister is like not a priest, but like some woman who is like completely irrelevant to the Mass or the order of the Mass. But in all seriousness, I have been shocked by the way that Amy Coney Barrett has ruled on so many of these cases. I remember the hype around her. I remember the way that conservatives fought for her. We put it all on the table. We went to bat for this woman because the left was coming down on her really hard. I think they probably knew the way that she would rule on Roe v. Wade. I have close family members who were affected by her decision when it came to the military vaccine mandate. I'm going to tell you what, Jack, the one that makes me the most upset was her ruling on Missouri v. Murphy. And the way that she just said, apparently the federal government seems to have the right to just go in and direct the censorship of social media companies, censor directly regular Americans, directly and indirectly through various NGOs that were set up by the government itself, through, founded by former CIA officials. So, I mean, it has been really troubling to see the way she has ruled on so many of these cases. We fought really hard for her, and it did not pan out the way we wanted to. And this latest case, I think, is going to potentially set a really negative precedent that some lower court judge can just say, yep, the American people have to continue paying billions and billions of dollars in foreign aid that now we know what it's going toward, right? Transgender surgeries in Peru, and in some cases promoting atheism in Nepal, completely meaningless, pointless aid that now I guess a judge can just come in and say you have to continue payments for.
Also, I want to make a slight correction. Gorsuch was raised Catholic, but he is now no longer Catholic. He is actually, in fact, an Episcopalian, which is the American version of the Anglican Church. However, Roberts, Thomas, Alito, Sotomayor, Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett are all Catholics. So we've got a Catholic supermajority on the Supreme Court right now. That is 6 out of the 9. We also have 2 Protestants and 1 Jew, Elena Kagan. And so the question there is, I guess I have, Evita, is why is it then, because you get this all the time, they'll say, like, well, you Catholics are all this and you Catholics are all that. But in fact, we've got a huge split. We've got huge splits here among the Catholics. Like Sotomayor and Thomas couldn't be more radically different in terms of their jurisprudence, and yet they're all Catholic. And so when you were talking about the Vatican II Catholics, and when I mentioned a Pope Francis Catholic as opposed to a Pope Benedict Catholic, we are talking about very deep splits in the faith, and something that I think comes down to this huge sort of like reformist movement that's really been pushing to the forefront a lot in Catholicism. But at the same time, you're also finding in the Catholic movement, particularly among a lot of Zoomers, which I think you know something about, where you actually see Zoomers embracing traditional Catholicism. What's going on?
I mean, it's such a good question, Jack. And I'll just say, preface by saying, I met Clarence Thomas. He was actually the one that swore my dad into office, and he's the most amazing man. And he is traditional, and truly, he is one of the only people that I've met in DC who I would trust with my life, who I just think is a genuinely moral person. Then you have, you're right, these other Catholics who are Catholic in name, and they don't seem to share any of the same values as someone like Clarence Thomas, and it makes people wonder. And I think that there has been infiltration in the Catholic Church, Jack. I think this has been happening for decades. I think it's been purposeful, and there is a rejection of tradition, a dumbing down of the faith. Even take what we're in right now. We're entering into Lent. It's Ash Wednesday. The way that the medieval Christians used to handle Lent was very based. I mean, there was no meat anytime, right? It was not just Fridays. And they ate, a little bit of bread and herbs, and they were really taking the penance and the fasting seriously. And young people right now are craving that in a world where everything is about comfort and about personal happiness. People are desiring suffering. I think people need suffering to feel good. This is the reward system of humanity. This is actually God's design, that we suffer, and then you have the reward of Easter. You have the fulfillment of your reward in heaven, right? You toil here on earth, you do good here, and then you get your eternal reward. Young people are craving this. This is why you're seeing a lot of conversions to Islam, because they do take their faith seriously, as flawed as it is. And we need to return to that if we're going to stand any sort of chance at taking back the West, and keeping the Western Christian values alive and not being drowned out by secularism or Islam or otherwise.